follow on me. We're marching out into the night. Follow on me. We're standing up against a giant. Follow on me. We might be walking in the fire, but if it's where we're meant to be, then on me.
Well, I show it is 15:13, so welcome everybody who has joined us on Zoom or on Facebook Live. Yes, we got Facebook Live to work today, so welcome back our Facebook followers. But the significance of the time 15:13, as if you've been on the podcast before, you know that John 15:13 says, greater love has no one than this, than to lay down their life for their friends. And that's what Mark did. That's what so many others have done for the freedoms that we enjoy each and every day. So we wanted it to be a significant time that we do this. And we're excited to have you here on Me 20. Some of you probably got in on early a little bit if you signed in early and got to hear part of that, why we chose On Me, which was probably Mark's final words to his teammates before he gave his life to save them and defend our freedoms. And so we're excited you're here today. I have one of my favorite people on the podcast with me today, Mr. JP Dinnell, who is one of my boys. He was on Task Unit Bruiser, was in Ramadi in 2006 with Mark. And JP, we're excited to have you here today. It's always a pleasure anytime I can be around you and your family. I love you to pieces. You know, we have a family that's given to us by blood. And Mark tried to explain the brotherhood thing to me before he died with you guys. And I'm like, yeah, I get it. You're close to these guys. You've trained hard with them. But let me remind you, I did not birth them. You know, are you really as close to them as your brother you grew up with for 28 years? And he said, yeah, Mom, that close. I'm like, well, I didn't birth them, so they really can't be your brothers. And the week after Mark died, there were 5 of his teammates that weren't, you know, in Ramadi with him because you guys were still deployed, that were in our home, and the light bulb went on. I saw that you guys loved Mark as much as we did, and you were hurting as much as we were. And that's when I realized that Mark's final gift to me was his teammates. And so blessed and honored to have you here today, JP.
Well, thank you for having me as a guest. I think it's absolutely amazing what you're doing, and you have quite the lineup of guests, and I am honored to be amongst those that have been on this and will be on this. I think it's really cool what you're doing and what God is going to be able to do through this platform to be able to reach people all across the world. And it's going to be cool because there's going to be people that listen to this in some parts of the world that don't have access to what we have in the United States in regards to, you know, just being able to worship and talk freely about, you know, their love for the Lord and their relationship with him. And, you know, we have it so good here in America, and this is just another tool that the Lord is going to use. And I think it's awesome. I'm part of this. Thank you.
Yeah, well, you know, we have had almost every single day, I think we've had someone from another country. We've had Poland, we've had Australia, South Korea, Canada, UK, I don't remember what other countries, but Australia, several different days. But to see that impact that Mark is still making around the world in such a crazy way is pretty encouraging. But I would like to give you the official welcome and read your bio now for everyone else who doesn't have the privilege of knowing you like I do. JP Dinnell is a former U.S. Navy SEAL and now a leadership instructor and speaker with Echelon Front, where he serves as Director of Tactical Training Programs. Jeremiah spent nearly a decade in the SEAL teams with 3 combat deployments. Sent to the violent terrorist stronghold of Ramadi, Iraq in 2006 with SEAL Team 3's Task Unit Bruiser. JP served as point man, machine gunner, and lead sniper for Delta Platoon, opposite the American sniper Chris Kyle in Charlie Platoon. He worked closely with SEAL officer Jocko Willink, his task unit commander, and Leif Babin, and was the driving force on many of the daring combat operations that Jocko and Leif wrote about in Extreme Ownership. Upon his return, JP again worked directly for Jocko as a training instructor at Naval Special Warfare Group 1 Training Detachment, otherwise known as the Mark A. Lee Training Center, where he orchestrated realistic and challenging special operations urban combat and close quarters combat training to better prepare SEAL units for the real world battlefield. He also served as combatives and marksmanship instructor and earned his Master Trainer Specialist qualification while helping Jocko rebuild and enhance these training programs into the highly effective platforms they are today. JP brings exceptional experience and frontline leadership perspective into the winning mindset and culture of Task Unit Bruiser. He serves as Director of Tactical Training Programs, Leadership Instructor, Speaker, and Strategic Advisor for Echelon Front. And JP, we are honored to have you here today. And that's just a glimpse, you know, that's the part you can write. I think for me, to know your heart, to know your humor, to know your love, you know, that's the part of it that glues that all together and makes you the amazing man that you are. So we're excited to have you here today.
Thank you. Again, I appreciate being here and being a part of this. And it's always awkward when someone reads your bio, but
I agree.
you know, when it's like your mom reading it, it's like, oh, that's, you know, you have a little sense of pride. Like, it's weird. You know, I've been working for Jocko and Leif for 3.5 years. And every time somebody reads that before I come up on stage or in front of their company, I'm like, oh, can I just give you like the condensed version?
Yeah.
Like, awkward. But, you know, being a part of what you're doing and you reading it, I mean, it gave me a sense of pride because it, you know, just reminded me of the opportunities that I've been so lucky to have over the years of just one, for being able to be in the military and serve my country is an amazing honor. And it was something that I was very thankful. And I reminded myself every single day, I get to do this, right? Mm-hmm. And there were some days that were better than others. And, you know, that was just the mindset that I had going through BUDS, you know, to become a Navy SEAL. Is like, I knew I had an opportunity that tens of thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of men across the world would have loved to have had, right? Mm-hmm. And I just remind myself every single day I get to do this. And that's what I do now with Echelon Front, because outside of the SEAL teams, working with Jocko and Leif and the rest of the team has been such an amazing honor of mine. You know, I've known Leif since 2003. You know, I knew of him in 2002 when we were going through BUDS because he was one class ahead of me. But when we linked and worked together, that was in 2003 in SQT. And which is, you know, for those that are joining that don't know this, SQT is the advanced SEAL qualification training that we do before we go, we graduate and go to the SEAL teams. So I've known Leif for 17 years, you know.
Wow.
I've known Jocko for 15 years. And it's just, to be able to be working for them and alongside them again, it's an honor. And, you know, for us to have grown as close as we have over the years, it's been an honor, you know. And I know it wasn't easy on my part because I was pushing everybody away for a long time. You would call me like 6, 7, 8 times before I would even respond, because there's times that when I got out of the military, I didn't want to talk to anybody. You know, I did that with Seth, and, you know, that's one of my biggest regrets is doing that to Seth for a while. Because all Seth wanted to do is just love me, right? And just talk to me and just, you know, be there for me. And, you know, when I say love me, I know that's confusing to some people, but Seth was my platoon commander. We deployed to Ramadi together. You know, we went through SQT together, and I had been on my first 2 deployments with him, and he helped me become a young man in the SEAL teams, right? Mm-hmm. And, you know, in Ramadi, we lost your son, Mark. We lost Mikey. And, you know, a couple other guys got wounded and sent home. And then there's like a dozen other guys that got wounded and stayed there. And, you know, when we came back from Ramadi, I had issues of just, you know, adapting to not being in a platoon to deploy. And, you know, I got out, and when I got out, I thought the best way to just sever that and not hurt and miss the SEAL teams anymore was just by pushing everybody away. And I'm very thankful for people like you and Seth and other buddies that are still in, that I can't say their names, that continuously reached out. And we're like, hey, man, like, we just want to know how you're doing. Like, let us know. And so it was, you know, it was a time that I know you said that the Lord would put it on your heart. And I believe that because I've grown up with my parents always saying the same thing and believing that. My grandmother, there's times when my grandmother would call me. She's like, hey, just wanted to check in. Just want to see how you're doing. The Lord put it on my heart. And I'm like, well, I know there's no way she knows what's really going on with me right now. So, okay. You know, because there's times like, hey, I'll be the first to admit there's been times that I've struggled with my faith. And, when things happen, you just kind of question, like, man, like, really? Like, is everything that I grew up believing really true? And then God's like, okay, I understand that you could probably, think that. Let me give you some reassurance. And then there'd be times that you would call, or my grandmother call, or, my parents or a friend would reach out. I'm like, okay, that's exactly what I needed.
Yeah. Hey, JP, tell me a little bit about your family. I know your family is very important to you. Where did you grow up?
I grew up in Sacramento, California. I went to the same high school that my dad went, the same elementary school that my dad went. I grew up in the same house that my dad grew up in.
Wow.
Which was really cool. It was a cool, small little neighborhood in Fair Oaks, California, which is inside Sacramento County. Grew up really close to all my aunts and uncles. We all lived within 20 minutes of each other. Grandparents were 45 minutes up the road towards Lake Tahoe in the foothills. So I used to always go up to my grandparents' property. They had 5 acres up in the hills, and I'd play Navy SEALs, I'd play Marines, I'd play Army Ranger, I played Delta, I played all that stuff, Air Force pararescue. I played it all growing up. And, I grew up with a really good family. I was very lucky. Parents were very involved. Aunts and uncles, grandparents were all very involved with our faith and us growing up. I think junior high was the first time I heard secular music outside of like the Beach Boys and oldies, because all my parents listened to was like the Beach Boys or oldies or Christian music. Like I'd never heard rock and roll. I'd never heard rap music. I'd never heard any of that. And then I'm riding a bus to school and I'm like, what is this music?
What was that?
Yeah. And, so, I guess you could say I grew up a little sheltered, but I mean, not really. And then my dad did construction and or cooking. So he would do either or. And so it was cool. I got to learn some basic, things of how to cook, how to build, how to, do a little bit of construction. Some of my greatest memories are just doing construction with my dad, my grandfather, and just working. I like hard work. I like, calluses on your hands and, just a hard day of work. And, that's what drove me. That's not what drove me, but it was a contributing factor to the enjoyment of being in the military and in the SEAL teams. Was I didn't mind hard work. I didn't mind like tough situations, because my dad and grandfather and my mother like pushed us to work our butts off. Right. And that's what was expected. And so, grew up in that region and then joined the military and was in San Diego for almost my whole time in the teams until I met my wife when I was out in Mississippi for combat shooting school. And then I met her, fell in love with a beautiful blonde from the South, and rest is history.
And children?
Yes. We have twin daughters that just turned 8 in January. And then Aiden is 14, and he is such an awesome kid. He's 6 foot and we're a size 13 or 14 shoes. And, we all do jujitsu together. We love it. That's what we like to do as a family when I'm home. And now with COVID-19, I'm home a lot, and it was, I like being gone. I like being busy, but I don't like being away from my family. So that's kind of like this dichotomy I'm constantly being pulled in, because all I know since I'm 37, I just turned 37. So, I mean, since I left for the military, all I've ever known is to be gone and travel, right? And just always moving. And I really like that. And I enjoy it. And it really fits my personality. But it sucks when you're married and you have kids. Yeah. I don't like being away from my wife and kids. I enjoy being able to sleep next to my wife most times, right? I like my kids being around. I like that, and I know I'm not the best husband. I know I'm not the best father, but it's a struggle that I've always kind of dealt with since I've been married and had kids. But this COVID-19 thing has really been awesome in the fact that, not because anybody's gotten sick, obviously, but it's been awesome for me because I've been able to be home. And we were eating breakfast the other morning, and my daughter puts her hand on my forearm and she looks at me and she goes, this is the longest I've ever been around you, Daddy. And I really like this. I was like, oh man, it was rough, and I was like, well, I like it too. I looked at Amanda and, you could just tell that, it affected her as well. And so I think coming out of this, it'll be really good for all of us across the world to put a little more focus on balance, right? And I've been really out of balance. But I will say, Amanda and the kids knew that. It wasn't like I just started running and gunning with Jocko and Leif and said, hey, screw you guys, like deal with it, right? It was never like that. It was Amanda and I had an agreement. We sat and we talked and I said, hey, for the next 3 to 5 years, I'm going to be gone a lot because I'm building this and I'm going to be a part of this and we're building this from the ground up. And you understand that what that's going to take, right? And she's been the biggest supporter of it. She has not once has she ever complained about me being gone. I mean, there's been a couple months where I was home 5 nights total. And I know you get it and you understand that, right? And just being gone all the time. And so that was rough. And I think this was a good little reset, right? This is a good little reset for us. And going forward, now that we have different services that we provide at Echelon Front, we have, Jocko and Leif created a thing called LeadNet. It's our leadership development training over the internet. So if a company, it actually better serves a company unless they need us in person for some big event. Instead of us going to their company, we can do the same training. We can actually do a more impactful training over the internet without having to travel. And we can reach more people this way.
Yeah. Like
instead of me traveling for a full day and then doing a keynote and then traveling, during those 2 days, I could work with 4 to 6 people. And it's become and also our prices are much lower. And so we make it affordable. And to me, I'm not going to lie. Like at first I was like, this is stupid. You've got to be in person. It's got to be in person because there's nothing like that. And then I'm like, hold on, detach from my emotions, right?
Yeah.
And kind of look at it. I'm like, wait, if I can serve 4 companies in the time I could serve 1, that's the best thing. Because what we do is to serve our clients. It's to teach them the lessons that we learned in Ramadi and Afghanistan and all of our other deployments so that individuals and companies don't make the same mistakes that we made. And we can share the lessons and we can share the stories to honor your son and Mikey and all the other guys 10 times as much. And so it's been a good adjustment. And now I'm like even more excited. I'm not going to lie. Like I was talking with one of my best friends earlier and I was like, man, you know what? If I only just have to travel once a week and all the rest are all LeadNet services, not going to complain.
Yeah.
Because that means that I get to be at jiu-jitsu with my kids, right? And I get to do things that I hadn't been doing, but I'm still providing, service to my clients. And, I don't know. I'm just excited. God is good. And here's the thing, like, I know there's a lot of people hurting right now because of the restrictions our government have put on us. Some I agree with, some I don't. Some I'm just straight up like, hey, you're going to places where you shouldn't go, right? But I try to detach from all that. I try not to put my my views out there because I know people can take those and twist them around and be the wrong way. And so I stay very neutral with that. But I'm also trying to find ways like, okay, how do we come out better after this? How do we do that? And I think we as Americans and as a world, as human beings, we should all really evaluate what we're doing, how we're doing it, and be more productive on the backside of this. Whether, personally and professionally. And I'm not just talking about you as a job or, what you do in your business, but how are you as a father, as a husband, as a wife, as a mother, as, a peer, as a friend? Like you should have the ability to come out of this, stronger. I mean, you look at Mark's mindset when we were in Ramadi, and at the time it was the worst, the most deadly and dangerous neighborhood in the world. I mean, there's 4,000 to 5,000 insurgent fighters when we were going over there. And, we just knew how bad it was going to be. And our leadership, I have this written down as like, Jocko said this, the best incentive you can give an individual is ownership over their destiny. Mm. And I think we should all take ownership over our destiny. Mm. Too many people sit back and wait for people to tell them what they should do and what they could do. And, when you do that, you are allowing everybody to dictate what you do. Mm. And instead you should dictate the situation. You should be the one that's planning and preparing and taking action for your future, for your life. And that's what we did in Task Unit Bruiser. We dictated the situation when we went to Ramadi. Mm-hmm. We didn't allow the situation to dictate us. We took control over our destiny by taking ownership of our individual actions. We took ownership over everything that affected our mission, affected our team, and affected our success. Mm-hmm. And that's one thing I loved about Mark is from the time I met him until like our last conversation, I never heard him complain. I never heard him complain, right? And there's a lot of situations we're in where rightfully so, he could have complained. He could have, just been upset. He never made excuses. He never complained. He was never negative. Now, I'm sure he probably was, right? But I didn't see it. And I don't know many members of his platoon that ever really saw it, maybe once in a while. But hey, guess what? We're all human. We're allowed to do that. But when that's somebody's primary mindset and attitude is to be positive, to help, to serve, to protect, to me, that's a hero. That's what somebody should strive to be like. And you don't have to be a Navy SEAL to fit that code, to fit that type of a person. You can be a single mom. You can be a grandmother. You can be a father. You can be someone who just lost their job. It doesn't matter. As long as you have the mindset of like, you know what? I'm going to take ownership. I'm not going to complain. I'm going to protect and I'm going to serve. And in whatever protect and serve, whatever that means to you, however you can at whatever level, that's what we should be striving to do.
Yeah. Boy, JP, there was so much good in all of that you just said that's so applicable for so many people. You take where you started with that, how you were excited to be able to be home with your family and your girls. I think no matter what situation we're placed in, if we can find something positive, and I always encourage people, before your feet even hit the ground in the morning, when you wake up, find one thing you can be grateful for. Even, when I lost Mark, I felt like there wasn't a lot I could be grateful for. But I found every morning something, whether it was, Lord, thank you that I had a bed to sleep in last night. Thank you that I got an hour of sleep, Thank you that I have hot water in my shower. And once you start that, it's contagious. But that we do have control. We have no control over coronavirus. We can't stop that. We can't determine when each one of our states is going to open back up. But we do have control how we respond to it. And if so many people in the midst of this sit down, reevaluate their life, reevaluate their mission, maybe it's time for your mission to, take it a little different direction. Maybe you've been prompted. When we started COVID-19, I didn't have anything on my plate thinking I wanted to do a podcast. I'd never thought of that. That wasn't anything that I wanted to do. And yet God said, here, I'm going to direct you. I'm going to use someone else. You're not doing it as fast as I thought you should be. So I'm going to bring Ryan in to help, give you a little kick in the rear. You need to do that. But we do have control. And I tell people all the time, I had no choice, the news that I was given on August 2nd. I could have stuck my fingers in my ear. I could have refused to listen to the CAECO officer when they came. But that would not have changed the fact that Mark was gone.
Yeah.
And my choice was to put on his boots and pick up his weapon and stay in the fight for you and for every other man and woman who serves. Stay in the fight for every other family who's lost a loved one. And my mission was clear. And it was because of that pain of losing Mark that passion was developed. And I think as people go through COVID, we can take, some of us are fortunate, there maybe has not been a lot of pain, but for those families who've lost a loved one, for those families who don't know how they're going to feed their family next week, for those families who don't know if they'll have a job to go back to or have lost their job. You do have a choice how you respond to the pain. And in the midst of that pain can become your passion in life to do something. JP, I know that there were so many days in Ramadi that were extremely difficult for you. Can you share with us one of those difficult days and tell us the details of that, but then how you got through the midst of that pain? I think it's easy for us to just say, oh, here's the platitudes, eat right, do this, blah, blah, blah. And they look at you, go, oh, well, you're a strong person. That's why you can get through. And yet people don't realize the emotional struggles that most strong people and leaders have been through to get to that place.
Yeah, there was multiple hard days, right? Because, up until we lost Mark, we were losing soldiers and Marines almost every other day. Mm. That's not an exaggerated number. Almost every other, if not every third day, according to the numbers of soldiers and sailors that were killed during our 6-month time, soldiers, sailors, and Marines, it was like one every 3 days. And there were multiple a day that were wounded. And so, over time, you just become, it's just part of that, right? And I hate to say I became used to it, but I understood that it was part of the environment that I was in. When I deployed to Ramadi, if you've heard Johnny Kim's podcast with Jocko most recently,
Amazing.
A lot of us were the same way. I did not expect to come home from Ramadi. I did not. I literally had everything planned and in place to make it easy for my family. I had everything written out. I had videos for everybody. All my stuff was packed up in my room and I didn't want to have anybody to have to deal with any of that stuff. And this is actually the first time I've ever shared this. So, I had everything, just because I didn't expect to come home from Ramadi because of what we knew Ramadi was like. Mm. And so I went there with that mindset and I had a peace because I believe in God. I have a relationship with God. And I always told myself, hey, when I die, it is my day. I'm not going to die ahead of my day. Our days are numbered. God knows exactly when and where. So if it does happen, it was a part of his plan. Mm-hmm. Or I should say when it happens. But if it did happen in Ramadi, it was just a part of his plan. And I just was hoping that if it was, it would be in a manner that I was allowing somebody else to live, right? Because I was single when I was in Ramadi. I wanted somebody who had who was a husband or a father, to be able to go home to their loved ones. And so I just kind of had that mindset and I just thought about that every day. So it kind of calloused my heart to death and destruction that we saw in Ramadi, but it didn't make it to where I didn't care about those people. And so when Cowie got hurt, that was the first major blow to me because Cowie and I, we've been together since we checked into SEAL Team 3 together. And he was one of my best friends at the time. And we're still very close, very, very close, but one of my best friends. And I just remember hearing over the radio when, I just remember hearing this single shot, right? And I'm a sniper and I knew what that was. That was a sniper round. And then I hear this machine gun fire, like a large volume, but it wasn't enemy machine gun fire. I recognized that it was one of our guys. And I knew that there was another Overwatch. I knew Cowie and Mikey and another individual were off in this other location. And I knew exactly where they're at because I was our leading petty officer. So I'd helped with all the mission planning. I was our lead sniper. I was our point man. So I knew their routes, my routes. I knew exactly where they were at. So when I heard all that, I knew what was going on because they just made a call over the radio that they were extracting and falling back to a rally point. We were getting ready to meet them there. And then we were going to fall back to this combat outpost and then back to our base. And so I remember hearing that. And then it was a second later in the machine gun fire. And then all of a sudden I heard the machine gun fire through my headset. Mm. And it was because Cowie had keyed up on the radio and said, I'm hit. LT, I'm shot, right? So he was radioing to us because Seth, our lieutenant, was in my Overwatch position. And he was saying, hey, I'm shot. So Cowie got shot by an enemy sniper, and there were multiple enemy fighters that were trying to ambush him in that area. And Mikey stood in front of him. The other individual grabbed him and pulled him back behind like this little pole, like part of a fence, like these big brick walls. And so it wasn't smooth, it kind of had a little outcropping. So they kind of tried to get him back behind that. This other individual was working on him. Cowie was trying to work the radios, and Mikey was standing in front of them by himself, engaging multiple enemy fighters, trying to hold them back while Cowie is being worked on, and we're trying to get the QRF in there. And I just remember that feeling coming over me when I had heard one of my best friends say, "Hey, I'm shot. I'm shot." And it was this guilt and this anger and just like everything at once. And the initial was like, "Hey, we need to get to him." And there's a little bit of arguing in our position over what we should do, whether we go to the rally point or we go to them. Well, the reason why there was arguing, it wasn't because they didn't want to go to him. They thought they were at the rally point. And the way I wanted to go wasn't towards the rally point. But I knew exactly where they're at. And I said, "We're going this way." So I grabbed a couple of guys. I'm like, "We're going this way." And I was like, "They can go to the rally point. We're going this way." And we just started laying down cover fire. Like we had a couple of machine guns, and guys were just like literally laying down cover fire as we were sprinting through the streets, bounding past these alleyways and these roads, trying to go to their position. And I remember looking back, and those other guys were like, so they started running with us in our way. And I remember as we got there, the Humvees we were setting security, the Humvees came in. It was such a hard thing to see my buddy laying in the street with blood all over him, and loading him up into that Humvee, and we're saying, "Hey man, you're going to be okay." And I just remember looking at his leg going, I don't think he's going to keep this leg, right? I couldn't see it. I didn't see how it was going to happen. And the other SEAL that worked on him did such an amazing job, working on him, tourniquet, saved his life, absolutely saved his life. And Mikey just being in the middle of the street, engaging those enemy fighters, right? And so we showed up there, and we're still trying to like engage other, people, and we're directing the Humvees to start engaging this way because these soldiers had no idea really what was going on. And some of our guys were like jumping up in there going, "Get out of here," right? And they're just, taking over those 50 cals on the top of the Humvees. And they're scanning, and we had kind of calmed down the situation there, and they get Cowie out of there. And I just remember like Cowie saying, "Hey man, I'm going to be back. I'm going to be back, guys." And we're like, "All right, man." And I knew. And I remember that was just a hard thing because I was put in this position of leadership with Seth and this other individual to plan out everything on these missions. So we had planned the routes, we planned the buildings that they're going to take, we planned everything. And when Cowie got shot, like I felt responsible. Like I felt like I should have been in that Overwatch, right? Like, hey, why were they there? Why not in this building? Why weren't we switched around? And hey, if they would have had more guys with them to provide security as they left, maybe this wouldn't have happened. And I just that was the last time I saw Cowie until we came home from deployment. And, that really bothered me because I failed to properly plan and communicate to the team. And there's the fact that we were arguing on a rooftop in regards to where we should go should have never happened, right? It should have never happened. We should have been moving right there. And if we would have moved there faster, could we have changed the outcome? Could we have gotten the vehicles to Cowie sooner? Because he endured all these surgeries and for a while. And so that was a hard one because I felt the responsibility and burden of leadership for the first time ever at that level. And, and then it was shortly after that we got into a huge ambush, and a couple of the soldiers that we were with got shot up pretty bad. And a couple of our guys, we caught fragment from, just being in a gunfight in the middle of the street. And, we get back and guys are picking fragment out of their knees, and I was picking out on my shoulder. And it was just this is insane. Mm-hmm. And Ramadi was such a crazy environment that it seemed like no matter what we did on the planning, there was always just this element of, we're just going to have to constantly adapt. It doesn't matter how much we plan. it seemed at times like we couldn't control the environment. And that was hard because I was only 23 at the time. And I was put in a position of leadership, and I was our lead sniper, our point man, and all these things. And I had just turned 23 the month before we deployed over there. And there's a lot of times I remember just praying and just asking for guidance and just being overwhelmed at the burden that I felt was upon me after that happened to Callie. And, I told myself that I wasn't going to let that happen to anybody else. I wasn't going to let any of my guys get hurt, even though I wasn't like the main leader in charge. Like I took that very serious. And I've always been one that's very loving and compassionate with the guys that I work with. And I'm very protective. Like, you can mess with me all you want, but you mess with my friends or family, we're going to have some problems. And I became very protective of the guys. And, I think that just weighed on me. And then, like, I remember when we lost Mark. I remember we came back from a mission and we got the word, and everyone just sat there. Like, we couldn't comprehend it. And guys just kind of all went to their own little rooms. I just remember sitting on my bed and I started crying. And I was crying because I knew he had a mom that he loved more than anything. I knew he had family members that he loved. And it was one of those things where I knew he was a man of faith. And I remember thinking, okay, he's in heaven right now. He's in the best place possible right now. And I knew that he died doing what he loved. He loved the guys as much as his own family. And I know, like you said at the beginning, and that's why I was just kind of smiling when you're saying that, because it's hard for moms and dads to hear that and understand that, because it's like, I didn't raise these other kids. There's no way you love them like family, because that can almost come off insulting until you see it. Mm-hmm. And so, I just remember I was sitting there and I was so angry, and I didn't do very good at controlling my anger when I was 23 years old, deployed to Ramadi. But I did then. And I remember sitting on the bed, and I remember just taking a deep breath and just kind of like wiping the tears from my eyes and said, okay, we've got to keep going. Mm-hmm. And I remember saying, I have to be strong for the guys. I didn't say it out loud. I didn't say it to anybody else, but I just remember thinking, I have to be strong for the guys because we're all hurting. I'm not the only one hurting. And I didn't want to be like that. You don't ever want to be the person that wants it to be hard on them. It's so hard on me. The rest of you guys don't understand it. No, it's hard on everybody. Anybody that knew Mark was crushed. Anybody, including the Iraqi soldiers that we worked with. Those guys were crushed. And that should show you the level of impact that he's had on so many people's lives. And I just remember talking with Seth and one of the other guys, and we went over there and we had the memorial, and not a lot of guys were speaking because they were devastated. And I remember, I got up and I spoke, and on behalf of Delta Platoon and just as a member of Cascina Bruiser, and because I wanted everybody to know how much he loved them. Because sometimes in the teams, we don't show that very well. And I knew I could see the hurt, and I could see the guilt in some other guys' eyes. I could understand that and relate that, because when one of your guys gets hurt or injured, it doesn't matter what position or part of that, you're going to feel that guilt. You're going to feel that doubt. You're going to feel that anger, that darkness, that frustration. And I wanted to share it with the guys so that it could try to alleviate that as little as possible. And, when you see boots at the bottom of a wooden cross, it's hard, because it's just a difficult thing. And, but I know Mark loved the Lord, and that was what was very comforting, is to know like, hey, that was his day. That was his time. And for you to it's okay to get frustrated and upset and mad about that, because of course you love that person. You don't want them gone. But I had to really like check myself on questioning it, because I think it's a dangerous game to play if you're a believer. If you start questioning things too much, it's okay to have doubt and ask, right? But where you start to get kind of frustrated and angry towards God, like that's a dangerous place to go. And so I just, would just remind myself that he loved the Lord and he loved what he's doing. And we still had a mission to finish.
Yes.
We weren't done. And
Yeah.
Mark wouldn't have wanted us just to stop doing what we were doing, and, there's this COVID-19 has put a stop in how we conduct our mission at Echelon Front, how you conduct your mission with America's Mighty Warriors, but it doesn't mean you stop conducting the mission. And by you starting this podcast and moving forward with it, it's just, this is another platform and tool and way to conduct your mission, the mission that Mark would want you to be conducting. And we knew we still had to conduct our mission in Ramadi. And
I think as you share that, JP, that I think of Mark's amazing last letter home. And I read part of this paragraph the other day, but I want to read, he ends it with, just recently talked about above in the letter what he saw in Iraq, what he endured. But he says, however, what I do over here is only a small % of what keeps our country great. I think the truth to our greatness is each other. Purity, morals, and kindness passed down to each generation through example. So to all my family and friends, do me a favor. Pass on the kindness, the love, the precious gift of human life to each other, so that when your children come into contact with the great conflict that we are now faced with here in Iraq, that they are people of humanity, of pure motives, of compassion. This is our real part to keep America free. Happy 4th. Love you. P.S. Halfway through the deployment. Can't wait to see all your faces. And I think Mark successfully completed his mission. He did what he was supposed to do. Mm-hmm. God did not cause Mark's death. It was the evil savages, the terrorists in this world that caused his death. But God, that didn't take God by surprise. It's not like he was looking somewhere else and went, oops, oh my gosh, I missed it. I didn't see that was going to happen to Mark. He knew that's what was going to happen. And he knew that Mark's impact would be even greater around the world with him redeployed to heaven as it was if he would have been here. Yeah. And that kid is still changing lives such a crazy way, but we are still here. We're only halfway through the deployment. So we do have a mission. Whether COVID-19 comes in and impacts us, whether, in your situation with Cowie or with Mark, where you're like, this is not the way it was supposed to go. This is not what we had planned. Then you take and, it's so important. You guys talk about this all the time, detaching with your emotions. At the time, you weren't in a place like I was at home where I could instantly allow my emotions to start processing through it. Yeah. You had to stay focused. You had to stay on your mission, on your task at hand, or that could have been even more lives, that would have been lost. So at that moment, you had to detach and take those emotions. That doesn't mean that you ignore that and don't deal with that.
Yeah.
And I'm sure that was part of the process, when you guys then, redeployed back home, and you began to process that. As you transitioned out, I know your story, and I know that was a big part, of trying to deal with those things, that hadn't been dealt with. So for those people who are in the midst of transition, whether it's transitioning out of the military, whether it's they've already made the transition and maybe they're doing a different job, maybe they're going through a transition, in a relationship, what would your advice be to them in the midst of that and dealing with that?
It's going to pass. Like, you have to understand that these times are going to pass. And, I got on my forearm, this too shall pass, when we came back from Ramadi, because I remember, when that happened with Mark, it's like, okay, this is devastating, but we have to re-engage, right? You have to recalibrate, you have to get back into that fight. And we did. And we were at the very end of our deployment, ready to come home. And then we lost Mikey Mansour. You know, he jumped on a grenade to save the other two guys right next to him. And that was my new guy. That was my new guy that now I'm not bringing home. And just the burden of like my new guy not coming home alive was, I mean, it was so difficult to process, right? Mm-hmm. And so then you come home and we process it, we deal with it. We put Mikey, up at Rosecrans, and Mark's there, and I'm able to visit Mark for the first time, right after we buried Mikey. And, you're just dealing with everything. And it's like, hey, you have to get back into the fight. So you have to deal with it. And I, unfortunately, for a while, I thought that drinking would help numb that. And I was drinking a lot, and that only led to problems. And I'm telling you, like, drinking is not going to fix anything. Drugs are not going to fix anything. Painkillers are not going to fix anything. Mixing painkillers with alcohol are not going to fix anything. I tried that. Like, I've tried that plenty of times. I had surgeries. And I was like, cool, I'm just going to drink with my painkillers and that'll make everything go away. Nope. It didn't fix anything for me ever. It just made my environment worse, and it hindered my ability to heal and process and push through. You have to give yourself time to heal. It's like if I go crush myself and I do a workout and I'm super sore and I go try to do that same workout the next day, I'm not going to be able to, because my body is broken down. My muscles are broken down. They have to recover. They have to heal. They have to grow. You have to allow yourself to do that as an individual. You have to, whatever you find that's healthy for you, whether it's writing, write, type, read a book, go for a walk, go work out, go serve somebody. That's what's going to make the difference, right? And so many people are just not doing that these days. It's it's very unfortunate. It's very unfortunate, and that's what you're going to have to do. It's just, you have to prepare yourself for something happening again, because when we lost those guys, that wasn't the end of it. Extortion 17 happened, and I lost another one of my best friends, and I lost my roommate, and I lost another close friend on that. And then I was getting out of the military, and Chris Kyle was killed. And Chris was one of my very close friends. He was a mentor of mine that helped me as a young sniper, right? And then I'm out. And then I find out that my last roommate before I got out of the military, Brad Kavner, was killed. And it's just like, it's unfortunately, there's going to be bad things that happen in our lives, but you can't live in that darkness. You can't live with the guilt. You can't live with the doubt. You can't live with the frustration, because that gets you absolutely nowhere. You have to find good in your environment, good in the situation. And, you have to find a way to serve. I think that's what's helped me, is when I could recalibrate myself and recognize that my mission had changed. My why is going to shift and change over time, but how I accomplish my why sometimes just changes over the time. Now as a young single team guy, my why was completely different than being married with kids. Now, when I'm married with kids, the how I provided for them was one way, and then over time that changes and shifts, but it doesn't mean that my why changed. It didn't mean that my kids aren't what drive me. It's just how I accomplished that changed. And what I failed to do was recognize that when I got out of the military, my mission had changed. You can't sit in your past. You can't think that because you did one thing for a long time, it's always going to be that way. You have to be able to adapt, and you have to change with your environment. And people fail to recognize that. And that's what holds people back from growing and moving forward and healing. Yeah. That's what you have to do.
Yeah. Wow, JP, we could easily sit and talk we could do a Jocko podcast, like one of his 4.5-hour ones, but
We could. I unfortunately have a podcast that was supposed to start 3 minutes ago.
Oh, JP, I'm sorry to keep you, but
No, I told him we were going to be a little bit over, so we're good.
okay. Well, we appreciate your time. We typically have questions and answers that from our guests, but you need to jump off for your other commitment there. So we just want to thank you again.
Thank you.
God bless you. Do you have a challenge you want to throw out to everybody?
Yeah, find a way to, I mean, obviously my go-to is always like telling people to find a way to serve somebody else. And I know that kind of seems generic with along what Mark is challenging us to do. But I would say, identify one thing that you can do personally to improve somebody else's well-being.
Love that.
So
love that.
Try it out.
Awesome.
Hey, let's do this again. And I promise next time we'll have plenty of time for us to do Q&A. All right. I love you. Thank you.
All righty. God bless.
Thank you. You as well. Love you.
You bet. See ya.
Bye.
Well, everybody, that was awesome to have JP. Whoa, what a story. What emotion was poured out there. And these guys and what they give, and when they can be so open and so vulnerable and share some of the toughest things they've had to go through, it allows us to see, sometimes I think we get to a place where we feel like nobody else could be walking in our shoes, or nobody has it as bad as we do. And there's always someone that has it even worse than we do. But what an example JP is of how to go on, how to, it's important to detach from our emotions in the instance when we're there and struggling with things. Not that that means you ignore it and you don't deal with it, because you do have to deal with grief and with loss and in the transition. So what a blessing that was. You can follow JP Dinnell at Echelon Front. If you go there, I'm not sure if I'm going to reach out to him. I'll look at some of those questions that are in there, because we can save your chat questions and I can look at those later. We'll see if we can get JP to answer some of those and maybe post those on our America's Mighty Warriors Facebook page. So make sure that you like us there. We give most of our information on social media does go through our America's Mighty Warriors Facebook page as well. You can reach out to us at americasmightywarriors.org. If you would like us to continue to pray for you specifically, I know that Pastor Doug has agreed. If anybody wants to speak with him or have him pray with you, we are here for you. America's Mighty Warriors, we've dedicated our lives to our men and women in the military, those who are out of the military, their families, and especially our Gold Star families. So please, if you need us, we are here. Please reach out to us at americasmightywarriors.org and continue to pray for us with our mission here as we continue to take care of those who were willing to give their lives for us. We're so grateful for all of you that have joined our journey here with On Me 20, and we look forward to being back tomorrow for On Me podcast number 12. So God bless you all. God bless our country, and may He continue to heal our land. Have a great day.
When fear flashes its teeth like a lion, when evil roars and walls begin to shake, there's a strength that's not my own. There's a fire in my bones. He is with me and His hand is ever on me. Follow on me. We're marching out into the night. Follow on me. We're standing up against a giant. Follow on me. We might be walking in the fire, but if it's where we're meant to be, then on me.